and praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Glory and praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I am the resurrection and the life, says the Lord. Whoever believes in me will never die. Glory and praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Now a man was ill, Lazarus from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was one who had anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was ill. So the sisters sent word to Jesus saying, Master, the one you love is ill. When Jesus heard this, he said, This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this he said to his disciples, Let us go back to Judea. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to stone you, and you want to go back there? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in a day? If one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks at night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. He said this and then told them, Our friend Lazarus is asleep, but I am going to awaken him. So the disciples said to him, Master, if he is asleep, he will be saved. But Jesus was talking about his death, while they thought that he meant ordinary sleep. So then Jesus said to them clearly, Lazarus has died, and I am glad for you that I was not there, that you may believe. Let us go to him. So Thomas, called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, Let us also go to die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to him, but Mary sat at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise. Martha said to him, I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord. I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world. When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary secretly, saying, The teacher is here and is asking for you. As soon as she heard this, she rose quickly and went to him. For Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still with Martha, where Martha had met him. So when the Jews who were with her in the house, comforting her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out, they followed her, presuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come with her weeping, he became perturbed and deeply troubled and said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Sir, come and see. And Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so this man would not have died. So Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Lord, by now there will be a stench. He has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd here, I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with barrel bonds, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. So Jesus said to them, "Untie him and let him go." Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what had done, began to believe in him. The gospel of the Lord. Many of you might know some good and famous athletes who became great at their sport and attribute much of their success to their coach. Although these athletes may have doubted at times their own ability, and likewise their coach's ability to get them to the top of their game, they kept faith in their coach and reaped tremendous rewards for it. One such athlete in our day who fits this description, out of others I could choose from, is the story of Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer. He went on in his sport of swimming to win a total of 22 Olympic medals, and out of those, 18 were gold medals. Michael Phelps, when asked about what he thought of his swim coach, said he did not always care for him that much because at the time the coach seemed to be too demanding and taught in a way that didn't always seem relevant to him. However, in spite of this initial doubt, the important thing about this story is that Michael Phelps did listen to his coach. And in listening to him, Michael learned another and more deeper lesson that his coach was teaching him. And that was to have faith in his coach and take advantage of the coach's vast knowledge in the sport of swimming. Of course, the rest is history, because the more the young Michael Phelps improved at his sport of swimming, the more that small initial faith in his coach turned into great faith in his coach, and likewise the confidence to strive and win many races. Let us now compare this story just described to the story in today's gospel concerning Lazarus, where we find something similar in that Jesus, who we could describe as the ultimate spiritual coach for all, has something deeper to teach us, so we can be winners in the infinitely more important spiritual race of life that we may truly live. No doubt, as we heard, raising Lazarus from the dead was a powerful miracle that gives glory to God. And Jesus also wants to teach us through this miracle that the most essential thing to have is faith. Because without faith, we cannot be pleasing to God. In fact, Jesus tells us in the early part of the gospel that Lazarus' illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of Man may be glorified through it. And importantly, we see that at the end of this gospel, that many of the Jews who had seen what he had done began to believe in him. In consideration then of these who came to believe because they physically saw the miracle of the raising of Lazarus from the dead, what does that mean or say about those who believe and have faith in Jesus and give glory to God without having seen Jesus' miracles? Of course, we don't have to go far for an example of what it truly means to believe without seeing when we consider the story of the doubting Thomas found in the New Testament. Thomas, as we know, was one of the 12 apostles who would not believe the others who told him they saw Jesus who rose from the dead. However, as it happened, Thomas would come to see and believe in the risen Jesus after Jesus showed Thomas his wounds from his crucifixion. And Jesus said to Thomas, "Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." As we reflect on these powerful words of Jesus for those who have not seen and have believed, we want to often call to mind that this is our blessing today by God's grace. This is because as Christians we walk by faith, not by sight, and adhere and believe in Jesus, who is the resurrection and the life. And whoever comes to Jesus in faith will never be disappointed, for he makes all things new. Similarly, just like Lazarus, who is the symbol of the believer in today's gospel, Jesus will likewise raise us from the dead. However, in our case, it will be the most important of all, which will be to everlasting life in heaven. Moreover, and importantly then, it is faith that strengthens us, especially against the misguided world and their deceits, which are snares or traps laid to squelch our faith. With this in mind, let us often strive to remember that the faith we have been given is a gift from God and has to be nourished so we can grow in faith. And this means following Jesus and his church all the way. Lastly, this gift of faith that belongs to us as Jesus' disciples allows us to do what Jesus, the ultimate spiritual coach, tells us to do, which is not to win a gold medal or more, which isn't bad, but rather in the spiritual race to go infinitely farther, which, by the way, we can all do, and win the ultimate crown of everlasting life with Jesus in heaven. Please remain seated as